Okay, Rick, sorry, we're not live. Connectivity problems, it just said on my end.
Oh, excellent.
So let me go live again. See what it's telling me. Go live.
And I killed everything I have that's going to the internet. So besides this.
Let's see, go live. I'm gonna. Hello, everyone. Welcome to an Americans for Limited Government live stream. We really appreciate you being with us here today on Americans for Limited Government. What we want to talk to you about today are some of the hidden taxes that Joe Biden has in his Build Back America bill. But before we do that, we want to address what we are finding with our YouTube videos. About 84% of you who are watching are not subscribers to our channel, which welcome to Americans for Limited Government. We are so happy that you're watching, but we want to make sure you are subscribing so that you're getting notifications to what we're doing here at Americans for Limited Government. So let me just put the full screen up so you can see the name of the group, Americans for Limited Government. You can like, share, and subscribe. All right, hopefully that will get a few more of you to subscribe to Americans for Limited Government. I also have our banner up down below. So if you're watching and you're new to what we're doing here, we really would love to have you as a subscriber to help us get the message out to more Americans about limited government. We're fighting for freedom and liberties here. And Rick Manning is joining us. He's the president of Americans for Limited Government. And my name is Catherine Mortensen. Welcome, Rick.
Hey, how are you, Kat? You know, on the subscription stuff, you know, one of the advantages to subscribing is you get notified when we have a video coming up. And we do videos on a lot of different diverse subjects. And this will just allow you to know what's going on so you can access it at your leisure and know that there's content there that you'll want to check out. We do everything. You know, Americans for Limited Government is not just about talking at you. We provide a lot of engagement opportunities. We actually look to ourselves as being a means that our job is to help you be able to be more engaged with the government, with your elected officials, and in some cases with business leaders, to try to make certain that limited government principles prevail and that we push all the right buttons. And quite honestly, a vast majority of Americans agree with us. But the problem is that the small minority are the ones who are pushing the buttons in this country. And so we're trying to give you the buttons to push so we can retake this country for limited government, for constitutional principles, and for liberty. And so that's one of the great reasons for subscribing. You know, this is a fight where everybody's got to have a hand on the oar. We're hoping you'll join us by putting your hand on the oar.
All right. Thank you, Rick. So again, what we're addressing today are the hidden taxes in the Biden multi-trillion-dollar spending bill that right now is making its way through the House and the Senate. There's different versions. Each side has sort of different wish list of what they want. But one thing that hasn't been really addressed are those hidden taxes. Biden and the Democrats are trying to advertise this as deficit neutral, meaning it will not add to the deficit. But we know that the only way they're able to achieve that is through these hidden taxes. And I'm working on a story today that will be in tomorrow's Daily Torch. So I can tell you a little bit about that. But Rick, I know that you also have some other very big concerns with what are some of the built-ins to this bill, things that will stay with us for years and years to come.
Yeah, one of the tricks that the Democrats are using, and quite honestly, this isn't just Democrats. When the Republicans have the pen, they do it too. So this isn't partisan from that perspective. But one of the Washington, D.C. tricks, the accounting tricks, is the bill has to be supposedly cost neutral in terms of a budget reconciliation bill. And so what they'll do is they'll put a new program in. For instance, let's make it so children are going to kindergarten or going to school starting at age 2. and the federal government's going to pay for that. And so they've got that in the actual budget reconciliation bill that we're talking about. But it's not funded for all 10 years. It's only funded for a short while, because they know that that it's going to be very hard for politicians, once a kid is going to school, to throw them out and say suddenly, nope, you don't get to go to school anymore. So once they get something started, it's a really bad idea. People get used to it, and suddenly you have a hard time getting rid of it. Witness the difficulty the Republicans had in getting rid of Obamacare, which they never actually did. And so that's the whole theory behind a lot of this stuff. So while they even talk about this being deficit neutral, is a big lie, because they're setting programs in place. They're only saying they last for this long, when in fact they last for eternity. And nothing's more difficult to get rid of in Washington, D.C. than a program. And that's what they would force Republicans to do when they got back in control, if they ever did. And the fact of the matter is, once those programs get in place, we might fight around the edges. We might fight about what they entail. We might fight about curriculum. We might fight about the cost. But what they'll never fight about is whether to get rid of it or not. So the best way to stop bad ideas from ending up in the law is to stop them before they get there. That's what the Biden reconciliation bill, stopping the Biden reconciliation bill, is all about. But yes, there are taxes that are built within the Biden reconciliation bill. And Kat, you are doing a story on that. Can you tell us some of the hidden taxes? Because Biden has said very clearly that people who make under $400,000 aren't going to pay any new taxes on this.
Well, so the liberal-leaning Tax Policy Center, it's part of the Brookings Institution, they have found that nearly 30% of lower and middle-class households would pay more taxes starting next year under Biden's Build Back America program. And then there are the ultra-rich, people at the very top, who would actually be getting tax benefits and tax breaks. Now, one of those would be, do you remember a few years ago in 2017 when Trump rolled back the amount that people could deduct in their state and local taxes? And this was primarily impacting liberal states like California, New York, Massachusetts, that have very high state and local taxes. And it used to be that you could deduct those from your federal taxes. Well, Trump took that out, or he reduced it to like $10,000, like a smaller amount. Well, the Democrats now want to restore that to say you can deduct up to $80,000. So this isn't affecting sort of most middle class Americans, but this is affecting the upper income, very wealthy people in places like New York City and Boston and San Francisco. And so they're getting a tax break under the Build Back Better. And one of the things
let's talk a little bit about the SALT tax, the state and local tax that they're dealing with. The reason that it was rolled back during the Trump administration was because this is a wealth transfer tax. It's a wealth transfer tax from people who live in states that don't have high state income taxes or no state income tax, to people who live in states with high state income taxes. Essentially, what they're saying is, if you live in Florida and you don't pay state income tax, you should subsidize, because you're not writing off a state and local income tax if you don't pay one. You should subsidize states like New Jersey, which have extremely high state local taxes. California, which 13%. California's 13% state and local income tax, the state tax. Income tax, local, there may be some other local that I don't know about, but 13%, they're talking about raising it to 16%. What that means is $13 out of every 100 earned goes to the state government. That's not counting your federal taxes. That's just the state government. So what you're doing with this is effectively you would be saying, okay, California is out of control. They're spending all this money on income taxes, but the people who live in Texas should subsidize California's out of control government spending by effectively paying higher taxes elsewhere in order to make it so the people in California can write off more taxes to offset their state income tax. That's what this is. It's a income transfer from low state tax, places with low state income taxes to places with high state income taxes. And it seems to me that it's, even though I would personally benefit from this based on the based on where I live, you get down to it, it's really wrong. If people in California want to lower their state income tax burden, they need to talk to their state legislatures. They shouldn't go to Congress and try to get Congress to subsidize California's profligate spending.
Rick, another thing, the Republican Study Committee, which is a group of conservative members in the House, they've analyzed this bill, and they have found, in addition to what some of these think tanks have found, they've identified other taxes in this bill. One of them, it says $2 trillion in tax hikes will fall on those making under $400,000 a year. Now, this is in direct contrast or contradicts what President Biden has been saying for months and months and during the campaign, that he would not impact anyone making less than $400,000 per household. No, there are $2 trillion in taxes that would impact families making less than that. So people like you and me, probably most of the people who are watching us, are going to see tax increases.
And some of this,
go ahead.
Right, and some of them will be hidden tax increases. For instance, I know that there was at one point, I think it's still in there, a plan to raise the tax, the tobacco tax, for instance, the cigarette tax, and demographically, people who smoke tend to be middle to lower income, and as a result, if you're raising your cost of a pack of cigarettes by $1 a pack, that's a tax. It's a direct tax. In fact, most of the money you spend on your cigarettes are tax money. And one of the things that would be, I think, should be included in any attempt to tax a good specifically, like tobacco, alcohol, there ought to be a sign, gasoline, there ought to be a sign next to it that says, here's how much of your money goes to taxes to the federal government, to the state government, the local government. So you can see exactly the taxes that you're paying that you don't even know about, because you just know that your gasoline in California is $4.55 a gallon. You don't necessarily know that how much of that is state taxes. So they should be required to tell you how much is in taxes. And that way you have a better sense of the tax burden that you are in fact paying. And certainly on these hidden taxes, like on tobacco, I don't smoke, I don't chew, I don't use tobacco products. The fact of the matter is, there is absolutely no way that they should continue to make it so people who do are subsidizing things to benefit people who don't.
And Rick, it's not just tobacco. There are taxes for corporations across the board. The corporate tax rate will increase by 5.5%, meaning that American companies will face one of the highest tax burdens in the world. That's according to an analysis that shows 2/3 of this tax hike will fall on lower and middle income taxpayers. So when they raise taxes on corporations, the corporations just pass those on to people like you and me, who are the ones out there buying what we need to buy to keep our families going. And that's going to be a tax raise for us, right? We're the ones going to be paying that.
No, I think that's fair to say. And let me be clear. The irony to all of this is the engine of the American economy is the small to mid-sized business. It isn't the multinationals who have bevies of attorneys and accountants to try to minimize their tax burden. And I don't begrudge them that. The laws are complex for a reason, and they go and they figure out how to pay the least amount of taxes they need that they can legally. So that's fine. But the small business, the medium-sized business that employs most of Americans, they don't have that same capacity to do that. They don't have multiple corporations that can pass money through. They don't have international businesses that they can run money through legally. They're just trying to make a living. They've got a profit and loss statement. They've got just a spreadsheet like your household does many times. And so they basically have a bottom line, and that bottom line gets taxed. And they're the ones who can't miss the tax. Anytime they raise taxes, they're the ones who feel the brunt of it. I will tell you something that Americans for Limited Government proposed 4 or 5 years ago during the midst of when we're really trying to focus on what to do with the offshoring of jobs. What we proposed was this: a 0% corporate tax rate for any company that employs 100% Americans. because there's a basic rule of taxation. You tax what you don't want to have, and you lower the taxes on this what you do want to have. So you tax bad behaviors in the minds of Congress, but you don't tax behaviors you want to encourage. So you put a 0% tax rate for any company, any corporation that hires 100% American workers. What you will get is you'll get less offshoring. You'll have some people bring jobs home. You'll eliminate the tax rate on most of small businesses and medium-sized businesses. What does that mean? It means they can compete with the Walmarts and the Amazons of the world because they won't be sitting there paying the 15, 20% tax rate on their bottom line. They won't have a tax rate on their bottom line. And those other companies which basically get volume discount from people they buy the stuff from their producers of goods, they'll still have the same price structure, but the little guy won't be driven out of business based on the fact he's got an inequitable price structure for the products he buys that he passes through to you, and a structure that forces him to pay more taxes, in essence, pay more taxes than bigger companies. So you eliminate that one little thing. You say 0%, you can leave the rest of the tax structure alone for everybody else. But you say 0% for people who only have U.S. Employees. At that juncture, you will see a burst of activity and a growth on Main Street of business, unlike anything you've ever seen. And that would be the greatest spur to the U.S. economy that you could find. And it would only benefit the mom and pops, the people who are employing 50, 100 people at a machine shop, that kind of a business. That's who's going to be the beneficiary. We proposed that. Now, truthfully, it didn't go anywhere. But if they really want to tinker with the tax code and make it so it makes sense, eliminate the income tax on small businesses that only employ Americans, and you will see a dynamic American job growth unlike anything that's been seen in this country before.
Thank you, Rick. And I want to also address one of the very insidious aspects of this Build Back Better bill is truly how complicated it is. Some of the country's premier tax law experts have been looking through it. And here's what one of them said. If I can find the exact quote, is something to the effect that it's so complicated right now that, and things change from year to year. As Rick explained earlier, some of these provisions are only in there for a year or two as sort of a gimmick to keep the costs down. But then they'll come back in the next year, or there's earned income tax credits that are there for a year or two and then they go away. And so it's very complicated. So as the tax experts look through it, it's sort of like, well, in this year, it could have this impact on your taxes. But then 2 years out, it changes because the elements within the bill change. So it's very complicated. And I believe, Rick, and you may as well, that is by design. The Democrats intentionally want a bill that is complicated, hard to get through. And they want to sneak this in on this. They're not coming at this with a sort of straightforward approach to government. And there's just so much in this bill. One of the other things that, and Rick, I know you know this, I earned a master's degree in public administration, public policy from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. And one of the first rules we learned in studying finance, how government finances big projects especially, is when the farther away the source of the funding, the more waste and fraud and abuse there is. And what this Build Back Better bill does is it infuses all this federal money into state and local programs. And the more government control coming from Washington, we know that that's going to lead to more waste, abuse, and fraud. And it limits the freedom and the flexibility of the state and local governments. So that's just one of the most egregious things about this bill, is how it tries to just bring in all this federal money from Washington. And when you do that, you end up with a lot of waste and abuse. And this bill is really going to escalate that problem.
Yeah, every single, I've looked at a lot of the different programs, and each of them have interesting little open-ended descriptors of trying to ensure racial equity through spending in transportation or education, and places that you sit there, buzzword terms that the left uses that then an administrator, the administrative state can effectively interpret any way they want to. And what seems innocuous will in fact be not even velvet handcuffs. There will be hard metal handcuffs on localities who take this money and because they're going to be told by the federal government, here's how you have to spend it. Here's where you have to put a new road. Here's where you have to build a new school. Here's where you have to do all those things, because ultimately this is about federal government grasping control over local governments in terms of zoning and other things like that. We beat them. Americans for Limited Government beat them on the affirmatively furthering fair housing, getting the Trump administration to pull that regulation in the last year of the Trump administration, after fighting it for 6 years. But the fact is, every spend they have in there is effectively a mini takeover of local zoning, of local prerogatives, and you're going to have federal administrators essentially running your local governments. And when you complain about it, your local elected officials going to look at you and say, "Hey, the federal government says we have to do this," and so ultimately, you want to lose local control. Well, pass this. And it is I think what we've learned through this whole CRT thing and the various school board problems we're experiencing is that we really don't want the federal government operating these things, creating our curricula and the like. We want that being done with the needs of the students in the district in mind and with the parents' input. And trust me on this, if the Biden 1-point reconciliation bill gets done, you will have power and control emanating from Washington, D.C., and your local governments will be effectively nothing more than the servant class that implements what the federal government wants to do, and you're not going to have any say on it. You can elect whoever you want. They're just going to be forced to do what the federal government says, because that's what the law says. And if they take the money, they have to follow the law.
Rick, and just to wrap this up, one other great point that the Cato Institute tax analyst makes, and I'll be quoting him in my piece tomorrow in the Daily Torch, is a lot of what this federal bill would do is take over activities already happening by the private sector, is already doing them. So it crowds out private sector activity. It brings in more federal money, crowding out efforts of local and state governments, taking away their flexibility and freedom to customize for their own localities. So in addition to the tax increases, this is just a massive enlargement of the federal government. And we are encouraging people to go to our website, getliberty.org. There's a one-click button on the homepage there that tells you to stop this huge, massive spending bill from going through. Rick, what are you hearing is the latest on sort of where this bill is at? Where are the negotiations? What are you hearing there?
Well, the negotiations come down to a couple of things. They don't have they don't have something final written, at least not released. The negotiations are coming down to what is Joe Manchin willing to do? Joe Manchin the inflation numbers being out of control has Senator Manchin very concerned about that. And so he's already forced them to take it down from 3.5 to 1.75, between 1.75 and 2 trillion. But that's where the rubber meets the road. And quite honestly, I don't know how they get Joe Manchin's support, given the inflation numbers, given the continuation of the Green New Deal within the construct of this bill, given the attack on both natural gas and coal, which are really significantly important to the West Virginia economy. So they've got a way to go in terms of getting that done. But the fact of the matter is, like most things in Washington, D.C., once they have a deal, it'll go fast. And so let's not wait until we know exactly what's going on. Let's make certain that our senators and House members understand that this bill is unacceptable. It's a bad bill. It's an unlawful constitutional expansion of government. So let's just let them have it. Go to the getliberty.org site, punch the button that says that talks about the stop the expansion of government. What is it? The $1 trillion bill, or what it is? What do we call it, Catherine?
Yeah, the 3.5 trillion. I think that
Okay.
we made
Yeah, stop the 3.
Yeah.
So just do that, and it's a legislators need to hear from you. They're going to go away for Thanksgiving. They're going to come back for a short period of time to try to pass a funding bill to fund the government the first week of December. And so if you're going to see something, we could see something going in the first 2 weeks of December. And if they don't hear from you now and hear from you continuously for the next 3 weeks, we're going to wake up. We're going to wake up on Christmas Day, and Uncle Sam will have left us a big pile of coal. I was going to say something else, but I'll stick with coal. So let's try to let's jump on it, do the best we can, and I believe we have a real shot at stopping this right now. But it just the federal government, our local, our state, and our federal officials need to hear from each and every one of you. So please do that. No matter how strong you think they are or how bad you think they are, they still need to hear from you right now. So please do that. Jump on it, hit the button, and any dollars that we happen to raise off of that, we're going to flow back into this campaign. We have to stop this bill.
Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Rick. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And we'll see you next time on an Americans for Limited Government live stream.